50 years ago today, Air Force One took President Kennedy and the First Lady to Dallas and brought the president's body back to Washington, D.C. That Air Force One airplane is now part of the Miami Valley, preserved and on display at the Air Force Museum at Wright-Patt. Air Force historian Dr. Jeff Underwood tells us how important this relic is.
This aircraft has an international reputation. People may know it by its actual designation as a VC-137, but most people know it as President Kennedy's Air Force One. If I say that, everyone in the world knows exactly which plane I'm talking about, and it's this very airplane. There's some images in American history that are just transcend the normal. President Johnson taking the oath of office, that terrible photograph of the casket of carrying John Kennedy's body being carried in the aircraft, or the exuberance of President Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy stepping off the aircraft that fateful morning. They're waving at crowds of thousands of cheering people. There's smiles, they're going down. It's a bright sunny day now in Dallas, and the world looks bright and rosy. So those images are available, and a visitor to the museum can actually go on this aircraft and see those exact places where those famous photographs were taken.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have seen the plane in photographs, but to be able to stand there and feel like you're standing in the exact spot that they were would be really powerful.
Yeah, and chilling moments, and they have photos that document those different instances, it's part of the tour. And as we said, that tour is available today, and they've basically doubled the amount of shuttles and whatnot that people, because they expect such a huge crowd
yeah,
today.
It was national news. I saw it on a couple of national news programs.
Absolutely. Well, coming up we're not done with that yet. Coming up in our next hour, we will show you some of the areas inside the plane where history took place, including the spot where the crew actually cut away the seats to make room for President Kennedy's casket. That's in our next hour. The Air Force One airplane that took President Kennedy to Dallas 50 years ago today is now part of the Miami Valley, preserved and on display at the Air Force Museum at Wright-Patt. After the crew learned of the assassination, they refused to put Kennedy's casket in the cargo hold. Instead, they cut the bulkhead and pulled out 4 seats to fit the casket in. Those cut marks are just one of the chilling scenes that visitors can see inside the plane. Here's Air Force historian Dr. Jeff Underwood.
And as I show people these places on the plane where events transpired, depending on their age, I see some people start tearing up a little bit, and I can see the look on their face as they slip back 50 years in their memory, and they remember exactly where they were when President Kennedy was assassinated. For example, they look at where the air crew cut away the bulkhead, and they can still see the line that the air crew cut away on that day. It gives them a connection that automatically connects them across 50 years of time. The most common question I get is, where was the saw cut made to bring in the president's casket? The most common misconception about this aircraft is how large it is on the inside. It's a big airplane, and they are used to seeing photographs of the current Air Force One, and it looks very spacious. But when they get on this aircraft, it's very, very tight. But there's no wasted space. It's just a marvel of engineering design for space utilization. So that's probably the #1 misconception about this aircraft, is how small it really is on the inside.
Really a fascinating look inside the aircraft. Our videographer Lee Furry got the tour and said, as he toured different parts where Lyndon Johnson was sworn in, where the casket was kept, he got the chills. It was just a chilling to be that close to history, is what he said. So
and
really cool.
The historian has a good point about how small it is. We have a question on our ABC Facebook page. Have you been out to Wright-Patt and seen Kennedy's Air Force One? And Craig wrote in, he was the first person to comment, smaller than I thought it would be. So I think that is the genuine reaction of a lot of people.
It was used for years and years, but over the years, the airplanes that they used as Air Force One kept getting bigger and bigger. So way back then, it was just a normal-sized, smaller aircraft. Well, the Air Force One airplane at Wright-Patt was in service for more than 30 years, and coming up in our next hour, find out what other moments in history the plane was part of. That's in our next hour. 50 years ago today, Air Force One took President Kennedy and the First Lady to Dallas and brought the president's body back to Washington, D.C. That Air Force One airplane is now part of the Miami Valley, preserved and on display at the Air Force Museum at Wright-Patt. Air Force historian Dr. Jeff Underwood tells us what other history-making trips that plane made.
This aircraft has an international reputation. People may know it by its actual designation as a VC-137, but most people know it as President Kennedy's Air Force One. If I say that, everyone in the world knows exactly which plane I'm talking about, and it's this very airplane. This airplane has a 36-year flying history. It carried President Kennedy to Berlin when he gave that famous Ich bin ein Berliner speech. It carried President Nixon to China and helped break down the Cold War. It carried President Nixon to Moscow. This is the aircraft that carried the Queen of England to visit President Reagan at the Reagan Library. It carried Secretary Baker to the Middle East when we tried to get the Iraqis to move out of Kuwait one last time. It also secretly carried Henry Kissinger to Paris for the secret peace talks that ended the war in Southeast Asia. So it has a long 36-year career as a presidential and a VIP aircraft.
And take a live look right now at Kennedy's gravesite at Arlington National Cemetery. The sun is just coming up out there in D.C. A memorial has been set up for him, and you're looking at the eternal flame. I'm sure a lot of people coming to Wright Pat to see the plane, but as well as Arlington National Cemetery, that should be crowded with a lot of folks out there today.
Yeah, and we'll have much more on the 50th anniversary of JFK's assassination over on Fox 45, show you more of the plane as well. So.
And how interesting, 36 years of flying history. For some reason, you know, you kind of just assume once it had the moments with JFK, it probably just sat there and retired, but that wasn't the case at all.
No, 1998, right up through Clinton, it was used for a lot of things. So go out and check it out. If you can't get out there today, it'll be crowded, but it's, you know, they're open next week and everything.
And year round.
Yep.